Hello, everybody. So, today I'm going to be giving you my opinion on the words nigger and nigga. And the very first thing I want to say is that if you're not mature enough for this topic, then don't watch the video. And definitely, if you're not mature enough for this topic, don't comment on this video. There's plenty of other videos for non mature audiences. This one is for mature audiences. So, please. All right, so let's get into it. Um, I guess I should start this off by saying that I'm not black. I'm not half black. I'm not 1/10 black. I didn't grow up in black neighborhoods. Nothing of the sort. I'm actually Chicano. I'm Mexican American. I'm half white, half Mexican. Identify more as Mexican. That's who I grew up with, etc., etc. Okay, and I guess I'll use that to lead into my opinions. So the first thing I want to say on that, sort of my opinion, but kind of a Chicano's opinion, is I'm 40 years old. I was born in 1982. And when I grew up, by the time I start realizing things, say, the early 90s, when I'm, 8, 10 years old, whatever, during that time, from someone, I was born in California, raised in California, Southern California, and I don't remember any non-black people using that words, especially using those words, especially kids, teenagers, either of the N words. I don't recollect that. Perhaps there's other Chicanos who grew up in neighborhoods where they did hear, other say white or Hispanic or maybe Asian kids using that word, but I did not. Okay. I grew up with understanding at that time that it was very taboo to use either of those words in any context. It just wasn't. If you heard either of, and especially the word nigger, it was offensive. It was a bad word. Okay? Jump forward 30 something years to now, 2022, there are a lot of kids and teenagers using that word, including Hispanic kids. Some Mexican, or other Latinos, right? The one that I can think of off the top of my head is a rapper named Tekashi 69. I'm not sure if he's Mexican or Puerto Rican or whatever he is, but he's some kind of Latino, from my understanding. And he grew up on the East Coast, New York, and he used the word nigga in his general talking when he's speaking, and he defends the use of him using the word because he says he grew up. That's the people he grew up around. They use that word, whatever, right? And what I'm not going to do is give my opinion on whether he's right or wrong. My point is merely that the culture has changed since I was a little kid to where it was taboo for any non-black person to use either of the N words, to where now it seems to be the culture of where, well, some people can use it or have the right to use it or wherever they feel like they're entitled to use it. One area that I did hear it used, maybe not when I was a kid, but when I was a little bit older. So I've been incarcerated before. I was locked up for 6 years in California. And I did come across white guys who were gang members in black gangs. And they used the word nigga sometimes, maybe not so much. But so I have seen it, okay? I have seen it personally from white guys and, Chicano or Latino guys like Tekashi. Like I said, it's the culture nowadays. And it feels kind of weird for me as an older person who's not black because, like I said, we didn't use that word. I never heard Asian kids using that word when I was a kid, or, Latino kids, or any non-black person using that kid. The only time that I heard that word, the word nigger was an offensive context towards black people, and the only time we heard the word nigga was in rap music, or maybe if I heard a comedy show by say someone like, what's his name, like Richard Pryor. I think he used to use that word in some of his comedy shows. So I heard the word being used. As a kid growing up in Southern California, rap music was coming out. I heard the word nigga being used. But I really don't remember kids using at that time. Okay, so let's start that off. That's my perspective. I kind of have the old mentality that it's kind of offensive in all areas, but I noticed that now it's the culture to where other non-black people use that word, right? And that leads me to the next thing is why it's a modern culture to use that word, and that a lot of it came from rap music, which is interesting. So I'm no historian on the N words at all. Okay, so this is just a very general Matt's perspective on this, right? And so from my general knowledge of the N words is the word nigger has been used for, I don't know, maybe hundreds of years since the slave times. And like I said, that was an offensive word used towards black people, right? Now, somewhere along the line, I don't know what years or decades or when, somewhere along the line, black people kind of took that word back and made it less offensive and started referring to themselves as nigga. The earliest cases that I know of, like I said, were like old time comedians like Richard Pryor in the 70s, maybe 60s, I don't know, using that word. And but my most aware situation of people using that word was rap music, right? So this is interesting to me. The transition to where the N word was exclusively a bad word, a racist word, generally from white people to black people, to where at some point in time, like I said, I don't know when, black people kind of took it back and they started referring to each other as, oh, hey, what's up, nigga, this and that. Okay, like I said, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, whenever they started doing that, right? And then the interesting thing that happened is because black people were using that amongst each other, okay, and then this new cultural thing came out in, I don't know, say the late 70s or whatever, rap music, right? But they didn't use the word yet in 70s rap, maybe not even early 80s rap, but like maybe mid 80s rap music, early 90s rap music, rappers started using, the word nigga in their music, right? And because they did that, rap music got very popular, over the past couple decades, few decades, rap has got very popular. And so they almost have retaught that word back to kids. So when I was born and I was being raised, the N word was kind of fading. Because like I said, the only time you really heard it used was in an offensive manner and you didn't want to use it. And so, especially in Southern California, maybe in states like Mississippi or Alabama, you probably heard it a lot. But in Southern California, you just didn't hear that word. I didn't even hear any racist white people calling it to black people. I didn't hear it. I just didn't hear that word at all. Just maybe in movies or something like that, right? So the word was kind of fading. Then rap music came out, and the more modern day rappers, like the 90s rappers and stuff like that, they were using it a lot. And so now it wasn't okay. So it wasn't just black people listen to rap music, Chicano kids like myself like rap music, white kids like rap music, stuff like that. And so we started hearing the word now in a new context. I had never heard that word in a non-offensive context before, probably until I heard it in a rap song, right? And so that started, like I said, in the early 90s or whatever. And now think about that. It's been going on for 30 years now. And so kids who were born later, in say in the 2000s or whatever, they grew up in a culture where rap became the dominant music in our country, in the United States. And in that dominant music, that the N-word was being used. And so, like I said, they got taught that by rappers. And so now they're using that word. That it's for them, it's a cultural thing. The kids nowadays, they didn't grow up like I grew up, how a lot of older black people grew up, where it's very, very offensive. They grew up in a world where they just heard it in rap music all the time, jamming along to it, whatever. And so, whatever, it got triggered in their head that it just wasn't offensive. They just thought that was, a word. I mean, they're aware, they're aware that it's an offensive word, but, like I said, rap music has become so dominant. You hear it so much, it becomes a part of your vocabulary, right? Now that's not justifying the use of the word whatsoever in any context, but I'm just saying it's kind of interesting the transition from the N words being totally offensive to where then to just black people using it amongst each other to where now it's a cultural thing to where all kinds of different kids use it. And then of course, um, there's instances where like okay, so I was incarcerated for 6 years in California, right? And one example is I've seen white guys who were in black gangs. So in prison in California, just to give you a quick overview, in prison in California, it's very racially segregated. You know, Hispanics with Hispanics, whites with whites, blacks with blacks. Very, very segregated in California prisons, right? However, there were times where I seen white guys who were part of black gangs, and so they would hang out with the black guys because that's who they grew up with. That's all they know, right? And from time to time, I did hear some of the white guys using that term, and so that was the other thing. It wasn't just rap music. There was instances where white guys or Hispanic guys or maybe Asian guys, they grew up in black communities, maybe were part of black gangs. Again, they heard black people using the N words towards each other. Hey, what's up, nigga? This and that, and so it became a part of their vocabulary too. The most notable example I can think about that in modern times, um, just from my observations, is the rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine. He's also, I think he's Mexican. I think he's Chicano like I am. He could be Puerto Rican. I'm not sure, but he's some kind of Latino, right? And he used the word a lot in his general speak. The word nigga. Oh, what's up, nigga? This and that, right? And he justifies it. He says he's from the East Coast. He says that's how I grew up, and I grew up around people using that word. That's a part of his vocabulary. Again, I'm not justifying his use of it or anybody's use of it, whether it's right or wrong. I don't know. But it's just a point that it became so much part of the culture that you either heard it in rap music or perhaps you grew up in a neighborhood with other black people who are using it and became your part of your vocabulary, whatever it is. It's interesting that now it's become a non-offensive word, like kind of, not, I want to say for everybody, but it's this weird thing where like, oh, some people feel like they could use the word, some people they don't. But again, going back to when I was a kid, it just kind of feels weird because when I was a kid, it was just an offensive word, period. Didn't very much hear it. It was just an offensive word. And now we jump forward 30 something years and it's not so much. And it's very, contested. Who should use the word? Who should not use the word? All this kind of stuff, right? So that's interesting to me, okay? And now, kind of about the offensiveness of the word, obviously, like I said, the word nigger is used as an offensive word towards black people. And as a Chicano person, we're not immune to that either. There are definitely offensive words for Mexican people. One is wetback. Another one is beaner. Okay? The wetback thing, I think, because it's like when Mexicans are coming over the border, their backs maybe get wet from, I don't know, the rivers or streams or something. I don't know really where the words derive from. Like I said, I'm not a historian on any of this stuff. Okay? And the word beaner, I don't know, because we like beans. Okay? And a little funny side note, there's a skit from Dave Chappelle, and he talks about, because there's stereotypes that black people like chicken, right? And in his skit, he's like, if you don't like chicken, there's something wrong with you. He's like, he makes fun of the stereotype. It's like, he acts, he's making it seem like, okay, oh yeah, you're so much better than me because you're saying, I like chicken so much. But he's like, hey, if you don't like chicken, there's something wrong with you. And I kind of feel the same thing about beans. It's like, you don't like beans? There's something wrong with you if you don't like beans. So, you call me a beaner if you want, but who doesn't like beans? A little funny side note. Anyway, so there are offensive words towards Mexican people. Like I said, wetback, beaner, maybe other ones that I just can't think of off the top of my head, right? However, I would say, one, definitely, the words wetback and beaner are used less than the N words, definitely. Like I said, Black people have been being called that for, I don't know, hundreds of years, maybe a long time. I don't know the history of the words wetback or beaner, but maybe not as long, but definitely not as much used. Um, that's one difference, the N words are way more prevalent than the M word, you know. No, not an M word. I'm thinking, yeah. Well, wetback in English, in Spanish, it's mojado. That's why I said M word. My brain like automatically translated. But yeah, the words used for Mexican people are probably not as used and arguably not as offensive. I've been called wetback before, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem as offensive. Maybe that's just me. Maybe someone who's full Mexican, they feel more offended by it. I don't know. But that's just me. I feel like it's less offensive, maybe because it's less used, maybe there's less hatred behind it. It's more like, oh, you're stupid wetback, something like that. But that's just me. Like I said, maybe there's someone else who is Mexican who is very offended by that word. Okay. But it is interesting that, there's probably words for almost any race or like nationality of people, but the N words are, I would say, some of the most popular negative words used towards a race on the planet. I don't know if there's any more derogatory word used more than the N words. Okay, and so I kind of relate a little bit because, like, to the N words being used to get you, because, like I said, in Spanish or against Mexican people, we do have offensive words, but it's not as used. And in general, I don't think racism, at least in the United States, hasn't been as bad against Mexicans as black people. Mexicans didn't have to go through slavery, and I don't know off the top of my head of any instances where black people were being whipped or hanged or anything like that. Maybe it could happen. Maybe there's some Mexican historian be like, oh, well, there was these and these cases. I just don't know of any. Okay, but I do know of a lot of cases where, black people endured terrible racism, people getting murdered or raped and, like I said, hung and just tortured, etc., etc. Okay? So this all falls in because of the N words. It all ties in. It's all part of the general racism. So the question with the N words is, will they continue to be used? Will is it where it's just going to be part of the American vocabulary indefinitely? Maybe not. And I have a reason for it. So, like I said, what really popularized the N word, nigga, anyways, was rap music, right? And so, as long as rap music is popular and rappers are using that word, it's gonna be, part of American vocabulary, right? However, what if rap music dies? Okay, and now that may have made you think, wait a minute, rap music dying? Well, think about this for a moment. Pretty much every popular genre of music has failed at some point or the other. I mean, just think, nobody really listens to classical music anymore, like the Beethovens and types of stuff like that. That was popular during its time for however long, and it faded out. Even look at like the rock music, or even go back. Blues was very popular in, I don't know, maybe the 40s and 50s, and that kind of faded out and turned into rock music. Rock music was popular for, I don't know, 40, 50 years, something like that, and that eventually faded out around the year 2000. Country music was really popular, and I don't know, up to the 80s, maybe 90s. People still kind of listen to country music, but it's faded a lot. But the point is that, music genres generally come and go. They're popular for a while, maybe, a decade or so, like, oh man, what's that one that was popular like in the 70s? I can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyhow, sometimes genres of music are popular only for a short period. Some were popular for a long period, like rock music or even rap music. Rap music's been pretty popular since, say, at least the mid 80s, at least 30 something years now. But like rock music, it could fade. And if rap music does fade, another genre of music comes along, then the N word might fade as well. And so, for those, the point of all this is, for those of you out there, because I know there are black people out there who don't like the use of the word in any context, any person, whether black or otherwise, and they want to see the word go away because to them it's overall offensive, regardless of its use, who's using it, etc., right? So a little bit of light at in the end of the tunnel for you is, like I said, when I was growing up in the mid '80s, early '90s, the word as an offensive term was fading, and it kind of has faded. You don't really hear it a lot anymore. At least, again, like in California, I don't know, Alabama, Mississippi, whatever, I don't know, but it's almost non-existent. I like never ever hear the word in California, right? So the offensive use of the N word is pretty much eradicated or very, very minimalized. Okay, it's only popular in the cultural, the nigga word, right? And that was popularized by rap artists. And so, if rap does fade away, like all other genres of music eventually does, then it may fade away too. So yeah, so that could be the light at the end of the tunnel. This may be the final years of the ultimate use of the N words in any context. Like I said, if say rap music fades, another music comes on, you don't hear that word anymore, and so the next generation of kids who are born, say in the 2030s, 2040s, they may never hear that word, and it may just fade out. So anyhow, that's my opinion on the words, the N words. And there you go. Thank you for watching.